everyone. Welcome back to Thursday's Roundtable with Pastor Wes.
Hello.
Pastor Daniel McGinty.
Hey.
And me, Matt Downing. Hey, we are so glad you're with us today on this Independence Week. We had 4th of July earlier this week. We also had a Freedom Fest.
We did.
A couple nights ago. And
We did.
It was awesome.
Had lots of people.
Lots
of fun.
People, lots of hot dogs.
And you ate a lot of hot dogs.
We ate some Freedom Popsicles,
Yeah.
red, white, and blue, and they didn't all melt.
Nope.
And my
Was
wife is a
popsicles,
genius.
or was it?
We had sandwiches too.
Popsicle
Okay.
and ice cream sandwiches.
I
Yeah.
have to give a shout out to Brooke, who's a total genius with the popsicles. So the biggest problem with popsicles with the kids is it just drips and gets all over their hands.
Yeah.
She took one of those little, little trays, and she poked a hole in it, stuck the popsicle in it, so the kids, all the drips got caught in that little, French fry basket thing.
Cool.
Ingenuity, its finest right there.
mom ingenuity at its finest.
That's cool. It was a great night, though. We had lots of people that we didn't know, but that's
good
one
times.
of the reasons we did it.
No
We
doubt.
wanted to meet some new people in the community and reach out to our community. And speaking of reaching out, that's what we're going to be
good
talking about
segue
today.
there.
Wow.
We are doing a podcast all about mission trips, and call this Mission Trip Mayhem. But one of the things we want to do in this podcast today is we want to maybe share some stories of mission trips, why we do missions, and talk through that. So
Yeah, you guys just got back from a week in Guatemala.
yes,
and
we did.
got to hear a little bit about that last week on Wednesday.
Yeah, it was awesome. We had took a group of about 22 students and leaders and went to Guatemala, and we worked with an organization there called Clubhouse Guatemala, and we just were tried to be the hands and feet of Jesus. We took shoes. We did VBS with the kids there in the community. We did water filters. Ovens. We in the church. Our church helped provide these the resources for us to be able to do these for families that didn't have them. And then
So cool.
we got to build a house for a family, and it just got completed this weekend. So we got to do the brickwork and the floor, and then they came back and finished it out with the windows and the roof after we left. So
How many shoes did you guys bring with you?
hundreds. We had we probably had 600 or 700 shoes
Oh my
donated.
gosh.
We couldn't take all of those. We tried to pick out the ones that were in the best condition, and
Did y'all carry them on, or did y'all ship
yeah,
them?
well, we carried them. It costs quite a bit with the way the airlines do it now, where you can't. You have to pay to check on any bag, but
Any bag. There's
Every
I
bag
guess you
you
weren't
have to
flying
pay to check.
Southwestern, so.
we didn't fly Southwestern.
You
But,
have to pay to
Southwest.
check a bag, period.
yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. American Airlines charges $35, and then every additional bag after 35, it goes up.
American
So-
Airlines, not the land of the free bags.
Right.
No.
Note to self.
But it was an incredible week, and I was just so proud of our students and grateful for our church. Many of you watching this are a part of our church, and there is no way we could have done this trip without you, without your giving, your prayers. And so thank you. So there's also a video online too of the trip in case you missed the report service that we had. You can go back and check out the video. I think it's on our stories page.
Yes, if you go to our YouTube channel or to our Facebook page, you can see the Guatemala pictures and videos that Matt took away there. And you can see just in all the glory and visuals of just our students and volunteers just making a huge difference. So be sure to check it out. And it's always good seeing it actually in person.
Absolutely. Yep. So
Well, Matt, since you're the one who's currently talking, let's just keep going. What's your background with mission trips?
yeah.
Where all have you been? What all you done?
Yeah.
Give us
So
an overview.
my first mission trip was as a 7th grader. We did a choir trip.
Yeah, man.
Do those count? It depends. It depends
Did
on
you
what
share
you
the
do.
Did you share the gospel?
Share
on
the
the trip?
gospel. Yes, that was in Kansas. That was my first trip, and I've been all around the country, several places in the world, China, Ukraine. I've been other places. I'm trying to think where we've done the mission trips. So Guatemala, Mexico, Venezuela. So
You been to Africa?
Africa. How did I forget Africa?
Yeah,
Yes,
but you did Africa.
Tanzania did a mission trip there, and love mission trips. Love the chance to get to obviously see parts of the world. Let our students get to see how so much of the world lives, but also just to to meet a tremendous need that's there. And we are not interested in going to a city and painting the same church 4 times. But we want to do things that actually make a difference and give us the opportunity to be able to share the gospel through meeting physical needs. And I've done trips where we've done a lot of that. I've done trips where it's basically just going door to door or hut to hut, just presenting the gospel, and there's fruit in that too. But yeah, I love this one, this most recent one, just because we got to meet so many practical needs. And when you do that, it opens the door for you to be able to share the gospel, because you're showing that, hey, I'm not just here to get you to make a decision. I want to bless you. God wants to bless you, and I'm here as a representative of Him, and just to show you God's love. Doesn't just meet a spiritual need, but it also He's our provider, and He takes care of us physically as well. So,
anytime we can share about God's love in tandem with actually demonstrating God's love.
That's what Jesus did.
No doubt.
Met physical needs, but also met the deepest needs of people. So,
McGinty, is your mission trip experience essentially just the fact that you were born?
Yes. Hey, I was potty trained on the airplane at 2.5 on the way to Japan. And so my parents were church planners in Japan for 30 plus years. And so I grew up around that and saw, witnessed a lot of it firsthand. When I was in high school, did a lot of like mission trips in the Tokyo and Osaka area doing evangelism and whatnot through high BA, high school born againers. And it's interesting name, did a lot of cool things, reaching out to teenagers. And the initial draw was, hey, we got these foreigners. Don't you want to hang out with these foreigners? They're cool.
Yeah.
And their program was called Let's Be Friends. And it's like, are we really not going to retool this? Like, this is 2000, like year 2000. We're still calling it Let's Be Friends.
Would y'all play Friends or Friends Forever?
The Smithy song did not come out. But we would do some skits, and we would do some outreach, panned out, invitations to these parties and whatnot. So it was
So your earliest memories are from living overseas?
Pretty much, yeah. That's all I've ever known. And what's interesting is I've not been to a whole lot of other countries, like Canada and Mexico. That's about it. Like when I was in high school, I did a mission trip to Mexico with my youth group. And I remember my youth pastor asking me, like, so what was your impressions of the, the mission trip and the culture here and everything? It's like, yeah, it's interesting and whatnot. It's not that different from some other stuff. It's like, you jaded missionary kids. He wanted more of a reaction, I guess, or something. But did the Philippines in senior high school, like sort of mission trip / sort of other senior trip. When I was in college, when I graduated college, I did a 3-month mission trip to Tokyo to see if that was going to do as a career missionary. So basically, my plan through all of college was to become a career missionary in Japan as like a youth group starting kind of church planner type person. And so I did 3 months there to see if that was going to do. After the 3 months, I realized I'm not meant to live in this country. Even though I grew up here, like this is not going to work. And it was like this weird wilderness trying to figure out what God wanted for me next. But ended up teaching a Christian school for 5 years that had a heavy missions emphasis. So every year I would co-lead sort of middle school service / mission trips every year. And we'd go to like a nearby town and we would do service projects and kind of reach out to people. And I'll have some stories from that. But yeah, good times.
That's cool. Well, I was exposed. I guess I'm kind of like, we kind of have 3 stages represented, right? Because you were exposed to missions as a teenager. Through the local church as a lay person. You were exposed to missions from the get-go, from growing up in a missionary family. And I guess I represent like the in-between piece to that, because we weren't missionaries living overseas, but my dad was a missions pastor. And so my first mission trip was when I was 5. It was before I was even saved.
Wow. There
was a trip across the border as a work trip. A lot of men were going down to work with the pastor to build a school in Piedras Negras. And so at 5.5, it's funny, Bethany and I talking about this now, having kids and living in today's world, we're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that I was like, do that. But I went down there and just played with all the kids. Pretty sure one night there was a Bible study for the women and the kids. And I told Dad, I want to go hang out because that's where the kids were. And so I have memories of sitting in a Bible study where Dad entrusted me to the ladies in the church, and I sat there and didn't understand a word that anybody said because I'm 5 and never heard Spanish. And anyways, so I was exposed very, very early, and was blessed having a dad as a missions pastor. I got to do, got to go on a lot of trips. I think by the time that I graduated high school, I had been on somewhere around 15 mission trips. Now, the unique thing, kind of similar, I have been on a lot of mission trips, but most of them have been to the same places. I've not necessarily been to tons of. We spent a lot of time in Mexico, spent a lot of time in Steyr, Austria, spent a lot of time in Seattle, outside of Seattle, Washington. College, I spent a summer in Ukraine. And then after that, as a youth pastor and then college pastor, we had some choir mission trips that we did as a youth pastor to several different locations. It was different every year. And then as a college pastor, we worked with we went back to Austria with a different group in Vienna and worked with a church planter outside of Seattle. So, and then in Spearfish, South Dakota.
Cool.
Some rural church planting, but man, love missions, love mission trips. Obviously, Scripture's super clear that we as believers, we don't have an option to love mission. Like everything God is doing is mission. It's the mission of God. It's the mandate He gives. Great Commission, Matthew 28. You got Acts chapter 1. So we love missions, and the church should be about God's mission, both locally and abroad. And I always would try to help our college students especially understand, like, why do we do short-term missions? Because sometimes today, short-term missions has, there was a time period where it was frowned upon, and then it was the floodgates opened, and now it's kind of both floodgates and frowned upon, depending on. And some of that's because, like you mentioned, sometimes the short-term trip is, hey, we want to bring a group to you. And they're like, we don't have anything for you to do. That's not helpful. So I have a couple rules as far as why we do short-term mission trips. One, we only, as a church, should go somewhere that they legitimately need us to do something that God is having them do they can't do without our help.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so there's got to be an actual, and always when I call missionaries or church planners, I say, look, you owe me nothing. Please tell me no. The last thing I want to do is add more stress to your plate. There's got to be a need. And if the need is for us to pray, if the need is for us to raise some support, if the need, like, man, we're happy to do that too. But when we're talking going, and I think when you go on a mission trip, you essentially, there's three functions that take place, although I would really hone in on two. And I think you see these in Scripture. One is a true mission trip has to be where we proclaim the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's not just a sightsee trip where we're going to sing a couple fun songs and go check off some. Like, we have got to articulate the gospel to people that don't know the gospel. That's at the heart of a mission trip. The heart of missions is the sharing of the gospel, and then people responding to it. In addition, I think you see that the sharing of the gospel can take place directly in terms of direct evangelism. It can take place as you do what we maybe call service mission trips, where you're going to build a house, where you're taking up a collection for food to take to people who are suffering. You're building water wells, where you're doing it in the name of Jesus. And then three, and I think this one can get missed many times, I think the third aspect of mission trips is that wherever you go, you are going to be an encouragement to the local church that is there. That those three, and you say, well, where do you get those three? Well, you get all those three of those if you just read through Paul's missionary journeys.
Sure.
They're sharing the gospel clearly. Sometimes there's a service need that is doing things, and there's a component of that. And wherever they go, there's a heart for the lost, and there's an encouragement for the church that's there.
Sure.
And so I think when we think about how we go local missions, those are the three keys. And then on top of that, as a Southern Baptist church, we give a portion of all of the money that's given in tithes and offerings to the church. We send that on to the cooperative program, which sends that out to our mission boards, our international mission board and North American mission board. And we got
not
some
the
stats.
IMDb, the IMB.
Yeah, we've got
in case you want to Google it.
Got some facts here. McGinty, you want to run us through some of these stats?
So our cooperative program, here's some fast facts for you. As of 2023 May, total field personnel, there's 3,486 people in the field. Global missionary partners, as of May, 89 people partnering. New groups and places engaged by the IMB in 2022 was 93 groups. Those are new people groups that are engaged. New believers in 2023, 1,700 178,177 new believers. Baptisms, 102,417. New churches formed, 21,000 in 2022. That's a lot of new churches globally. That is phenomenal. Received leadership training, 146,026. And this is just in 1 year, in 2022. People groups globally reached, so that's total number of people groups that are being reached as of 2022, 12,019.
That's awesome.
Engaged, unreached people groups in 2022,
These are
3,000.
unengaged, unreached.
Sorry,
These are the ones that remain unreached.
Okay, so 3,180 people. So because of all the churches working together and pooling their resources, amazing things are able to happen.
Yeah, and if you're listening, just to kind of give you, as you were saying this, it was making me think, probably just to explain to everybody, make sure, give you a short little crash course. We're a Southern Baptist church. You don't have to be a Southern Baptist church. There's going to be more than just Southern Baptist in heaven. Let's be clear on that.
Yeah, I think
but as a Southern Baptist church, part of what makes us Southern Baptist is in our convention, we as these 47,000 churches, we pool our money and we give it primarily, the core linchpin that holds us together are the mission boards. Now, there's a lot of different missions agencies out there. What makes the Southern Baptist Mission Board unique, especially the International Mission Board, the IMB, which is the stats that McGinty just read off for us, is that the IMB, when we appoint IMB missionaries that are representative of and going on behalf of Southern Baptist churches, we are fully paying their salary, benefits, living, so they're able to just go on the field and stay.
Yeah.
As opposed to spend 6 months on the field overseas and then they come back for 6 months to fundraise and go back and there's this constant fundraising. Instead, what makes this the support we give as Southern Baptist unique to the International Mission Board is that when we send those missionaries, we are fully funding every part of them if they're going as a church planter missionary.
And deputation is it's a lot of stress. And which is the process of raising support and ongoing raising of support for full-time career missionary. I grew up around that because my parents were with OMF, Overseas Missionary Fellowship, and nothing right or wrong about doing either one. No. But it's just, man, the amount of time that it takes to stay in touch, and it takes up a lot. And you have some missionaries who struggled, who couldn't keep up with their support because they were come from a poorer country or whatever, or they didn't have a really good founding church to send them. Like my parents were incredibly blessed to have an amazing church, Cypress Bible Church, big on missions, spent so much just to commission them and support them in every kind of way. But it's still, there was times where it was hairy, where you're just like, are the funds going to be there? And so having that concern taken away, where you can really truly focus all your mental energies and time and just in the mission work, is tremendously freeing.
Yeah, so just to be clear, there's tons of great organizations. It's not better or worse to fundraise or not fundraise. Just was kind of for information's sake, making sure that our people understand that what makes the mission board we support as Southern Baptist directly unique is that they're able to focus all of their time on the work and not have to worry about the fundraising, which we're grateful for your support as you faithfully give through your local church here at First Baptist Pflugerville. So
I was going to share this real quick. When I graduated from college, I was a semester missionary at the University of Hawaii, and
you left that off your mission trip.
I did leave that off. I was because
are you embarrassed that you weren't suffering for Jesus out there?
I tell people this. That was actually one of the hardest years of my life because I was away from everyone and everything. I just graduated college. I had lots of friends, lots of family, and being over there. But I share this because I was supported because of North American Mission Board, and that they paid my salary while I was there, and so it was tremendously freeing to not have to worry about that because I had plenty of other things that I was having to worry about, but just through the gracious gifts of our churches, it enables people to do that. I worked with our Baptist Student Ministries there. I was intern there, and so I got to witness firsthand the incredible network coming together of churches, providing through the mission board, and so it's pretty awesome.
That's cool.
What we get to do as Southern Baptists and what we get to be a part of, and we just don't always see that. Like we may see a video or two in service, but we just don't always know all the work that's being done. So these numbers are, I mean, it's cool to hear that and cool to think, man, when we give, God really uses that, multiplies it, and it's growing His kingdom through it. So,
speaking of that, I think we want to kind of move into some mission trip stories.
Yes.
Successes, fails, awkward encounters, things of the various kinds.
So 2 categories: a win story and a fail story. We're each going to share a fail story.
Kick us off here.
And okay, we might, if we have time, maybe an awkward category too.
No. Just that may be the fail.
That may be the fail. There you go. Like, it's only weird if you make it weird, right? All right, we're gonna start off with the fail.
Kind of like dressing alike.
Yeah,
we're in the same color. And
I told Matt, "Where's your seafoam green shirt?"
I know.
Didn't get the memo on that. No,
just making it awkward. Go ahead.
All right, I'm gonna go with the fail story first, and this is it seems like a cheat because it's also ends with a win, but it felt like a fail in the moment. So this is leading an 8th grade service/mission trip in the Marble Falls area, and we had the big old van, and we're driving around doing different things, and we're driving down this kind of hairy road in the hill country, and all of a sudden this truck, and I'm the one driving. Okay, I've got a bunch of middle school kids all in the back of the van with me. All of a sudden this truck behind me is a double yellow line, very twisty turny, single lane road or double whatever, and it passes me right like as I'm about to turn into something, and somehow the truck clipped the front left bumper of our van and ripped the wheel right off. The wheel came right off, and the van just plowed into the dirt. And just accident, just the van's wrecked. And, the kids are all in the back just screaming like, all freaking. It's like that slow motion car accident. And everybody was fine, thankfully. But, his car was pretty messed up, too. Actually, I'm remembering wrong. Our car was pretty jacked up to some degree, but his car, like, it was his car that the wheel came right off his truck. His car was just ruined. And
you said it was your fault, or was it?
It was not my fault. He was trying to pass us on a double yellow line right as we were about to turn or something, and it was super bad. And so, like, our car is messed up, his car is messed up. We're on a mission trip trying to get things done. It's just a hot mess, and so it kind of limited what we were able to do on this trip. But because we traded addresses and contact stuff later on. The kids get to choose what they want to sort of do, some kind of blessing or service project, to kind of chip in somebody to do. They're always like, let's go help the pet adoption place and buy dog food. I'm like, guys, dogs, cats are great. Humans first, okay? Humans first.
False. Dogs are great. Cats,
yeah, not so much. I'll give you that. Let's focus on meeting human needs, and that maybe will open doors for the gospel or to pray for somebody. The dogs, we all know they all go to heaven, so we don't need to worry about it's bad deals. And so what the kids decided to do was, all right, here's this person who was acting very responsible on the road, wrecked our car, messed some things up. They decided, hey, his car's messed up, and you can kind of tell this truck is part of his livelihood. Why don't we bless his family and buy some Christmas presents for his kids?
Oh, wow.
So they all went to Walmart and bought a bunch of Christmas presents for this person that actually wrecked our car and then went to his home and delivered it to him and his family. I thought that was, so it ends with a win.
Yeah.
But it felt like a fail in the moment.
Yeah.
So that's my win.
Yeah.
/fail.
That's
I was
very
good
cool.
to fail. So,
yeah.
All right.
What you got?
Well, I'll start with the fails. I've had a lot of them. I
just own it, man. Own it.
Well, that's the thing. You go on a lot of mission trips, and there's a lot of cool things, and then a lot of mistakes. I shared about some in my sermon a few weeks ago, but there's one or two that I have not shared, and they both involve New York City. And we took a group from the previous church I worked with to New York City, and the actual mission projects was great. I and another leader, like the group, we took a large group from the church that I worked with, and I and another leader were responsible for probably 10 to 15 of those students. And we went to Ellis Island, and man, I know expectation. I'd never actually been to the island. Of course, I've seen the Statue of Liberty. I've never actually taken the ferry there, and we just get there, and there's thousands and thousands. There's I don't know how many thousands, but it felt like thousands people there, and we're trying to get the group. Okay, see, good, it's all right. Now let's get the ferry and get back. And we thought we had everyone, and the ferry leaves Ellis Island, and one of our students was left on the island. And so, not a huge thing. We just took the next ferry, went back and got her. The fault was more on her than it was on me because we had given them specific
cell phones
instructions.
at this point?
Cell phones, yes. And the next part of the story is where it gets interesting because she texted us, let us know, and we were able to go back and get her. But then we did a couple mission trips to New York City. I'm not sure if this is the same one, but one night as the large group, probably 100 of us, if you've ever done subways in New York City, it's just crazy. Well, I'd been to New York City, so I thought I knew. When we got separate from the group, and I still had my little subgroup. I thought I knew that, okay, this is the stop we need to get on. Well, we got off on the wrong stop of the subway, and I had no clue. It was late night, New York City. We're in the subways, and we're basically lost in New York City. I'm having to ask directions.
Isn't that the name of the movie?
One of our seventh grade girls texts her dad and says, "Hey, guess what? We're lost in New York City. And we're in the subway." And I start getting messages and calls, and I'm like, "Which one of y'all just who
outed me out of here?"
So yeah, it was horrible. We were able to get back. Everyone was fine, but I don't remember if it was the same trip where both of those fails happened, but they both involved New York City, and of course, it's not always your fault, but it reflects on you as a leader, and ultimately it is your fault because you're the leader and you're responsible for these kids, and
it's always your fault to a degree, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
so I try to be ultra careful. Like even in Guatemala, I'm constantly counting kids to make sure
no one knows how stressful it is to lead a mission trip of people you are accountable for.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or just young kids. I mean, like when we do these mission trip things with the middle school, our way of counting was, all right, make a circle, and you take note of who's to your left and to your right. Mm-hmm. And before we leave place, we'll do the circle. And if that person who's on your left or right isn't there, we're not leaving until like the circle is complete.
Yeah.
Because you could count and then you might miscount or count someone twice, or then you don't know who's missing. Yeah.
Yeah, I got plenty of stories about that, but they're not mission trip stories.
Well, I know I probably annoyed some of our kids and leaders because I'm constantly, hold on, let's before we leave.
I have to do it with my kids when I go to Walmart or we leave something. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, we got 4.
Yeah,
we're good.
Imagine having 20 plus that you're responsible for. But as far as wins go, and I'll keep this brief. But
wait, hold on, he hasn't shared his fail yet. We need to go to our win.
Oh, are we doing fails?
All fails, and then we'll do wins.
You combine yours in one.
Mine was just a fail. I got a win too.
Here you go. So you don't get to share any more wins.
Yeah,
You're good.
Yeah.
You do.
What?
Go ahead.
When you fail.
I've been trying to think. I asked the question earlier. What do you mean by fails? Because as I think back, there's been weird things that have happened or things that have been very stretching that has happened, but like where I think we just blew it royally. I don't know that I have. I'm just not remembering. Maybe they're so traumatic. I just have shut them out of my mind.
Protected your mind.
But I think of things like we had the first trip I took as college pastor. I'm suddenly leading this group to Spearfish, South Dakota, and we've got and most of these students on this trip, I'm really getting to know for the first time. I've only been in the job for 6 months.
Wow.
And we put this trip together very kind of late. It's kind of one of those deals where it was like November. Hey, Wes, where are we going to go on mission trip for spring break? Oh, do we normally have a spring break trip? Well, yeah. Okay, so I start thinking, praise God, church planner I knew in South Dakota. So we're Spearfish, South Dakota, and we had been doing stuff anyways. So one of the girls on the trip is new to me, and they said, hey, she's not feeling so good. She's kind of got this condition. I said, okay, well, keep me in the loop, and hey, she's really not feeling good. This is at dinner one night. And so I went over to check on her, and she looks horrible. And I'm just going, okay, what are your symptoms? And she's kind of feeling a little faint. And I'm thinking, okay, we just need to take you. I don't really know what to do in this situation because I'm now the sole grown up on this trip. I mean, my Bethany, my wife's there with me. We'll take you to the ER and just get you checked out. So we get her loaded up. And, of course, and in your mind, too, you're having to think, okay, how can we do this? Because, I can't just, I've got to have at least another lady with me. But I know that depending on how this goes, Bethany probably needs to stay. So I've got one of our female staffers who's there. So we drive her over to the ER. And by the time we get to the ER, and I'm freaking out, this girl is limp biscuit. I literally ran into the ER like holding a dead body. And you have never, and I walked up to the ER window and they went, "Hi, sir, how can we?" And they just started going. Like, they didn't even ask. They throw the door open, we get in. And anyways, and so we were there for a bit and ultimately had to get then transferred at 3 a.m. to Rapid City, a 45-minute drive. So I had to plan, okay, like who's coming with me for this? And all of this was the next day was our last day. We were flying home. And so it was a wild. We made the trip back and she was okay. She wasn't dead. She had a,
wasn't dead. That's the win.
She had a condition where at a certain point of stress, her body starts going into a kind of paralysis. And so she just had to get hydrated and rested back up. But I just remember going, oh my gosh, this is the first mission trip I've been exclusively in charge of, and I'm going to kill a student. Oh my goodness. And but we've got a great relationship with her, and she's a dear friend of our family, and I'm proud of her. And so anyways, that was nuts. That was a crazy one for sure.
Yeah,
man, that was definitely
it could have been a tremendous fail. It was
yeah.
a fail.
It would have been the ultimate fail.
Yeah. Well, you guys ready to share your wins?
Sure.
Let's do it.
Let me give you one more fail, and this was not on my part, but y'all will appreciate this from having led trips. We're about to take our first trip, college prep. We're going to go work with this church up in Seattle. We're supposed to leave on Saturday morning, okay? And one of the people on our trip is flying in from elsewhere that Saturday, okay? It's Friday. Is it right? Is it Friday? It's Friday, and I get a phone call from the travel agent. Hey, American Airlines has canceled your flights tomorrow. Okay, can they rebook us? Well, I'm checking. Oh, the soonest they can rebook you is Monday. I'm like, okay, we've got to anyway. So that was a whole disaster.
I feel like American Airlines is not the people to go with for these trips.
That was a disaster. I had to start spinning stuff. I found most of the team had already left to drive up to Dallas that Friday. One of my staff was still in town, so we drove down to Houston, caught a one-way flight up there so we could get there to pick this guy up, and then the rest of the group didn't fly until Monday. It was crazy.
It is crazy.
It was crazy. The first Austria trip we did, the flight got delayed.
Oh.
And it's the first international trip that I've led. Flight got delayed out of DFW. So we land in London to discover our flight to Vienna has already left. And so we have 9 hours in London. So we checked our bags and went and walked around. Took the metro into London and walked around London for
fun times.
About 5 hours.
Find the gap.
Anyways, I feel like those are always the travel fails are the ones where you're like, oh my gosh, I know it's not my fault, but I feel
Feels like
so
it, yeah.
awful
Oh
right
yeah,
now.
it's all on your shoulders to fix it anyway. You know, like when we were, this is a quasi almost fail story. I'm going to get to my win here in a minute. But we were driving all over Tokyo in this van with the mission trip. I was there for 3 months in Tokyo, and sort of like me and my buddy Noah, we were partnered to lead this group. And sort of he was the driver because he actually had a license that worked in Japan. And I, my job was to kind of manage all our funds and money and that kind of thing for the whole trip. And so I'm looking at receipts for gas and that kind of thing. So he fills up the car with gas one day. And this is like towards the end of the trip. And we get a couple miles down the road, and all of a sudden, just in my head, I go, "Hey, did you put gas in the car or did you put diesel?" And he was like, "Oh!" And he pulls on the side of the road, and he's like, "I put regular gasoline. It was a diesel van."
Oh.
A lot of vans, especially older vans in Japan, are diesel because they think it's actually cleaner the way they run. Anyway, whatever. And so, like, he filled it with regular gasoline into this diesel engine, and just it almost could have just totally wrecked this car. And we needed it for this mission trip. And thankfully, we were like between sort of breaks. We were heading to a camp for a break for about a week. And so we were able to get the car fixed and whatnot. But it could have been catastrophic failure on that engine.
For sure.
Yeah. So it was like you're just so tired, just giving. You just don't know you can make the slightest small mistake and not know it. So it could have been super duper bad. But all right.
Well, win. Since you're talking, what's the win?
All right, win. So on that same mission trip in Japan for 3 months, it was at a Japanese camp, I believe, and I was sharing a testimony time, and I was sharing about how basically I felt like I had a boring testimony. And I was recalling how when I was in a youth group in the States, when I was like doing the master teaching at like a youth group, before I was doing this at this like Baptist church in South Carolina, none of the youth group kids knew me. I said, "Hey, I'm going to do something really weird. I'm going to share a testimony I'm totally going to make up." And I made up this crazy story how I was like abandoned, left in a trash can as a kid. I was adopted into an orphanage, and I became a Wiccan and was doing drugs, all this nasty, crazy stuff. And the kids just on the edge of their seat, like, oh my gosh, this is just nuts. And then I revealed that it wasn't true. And I said, the point, and they just lost it. But the point is, you don't have to have a crazy story. Every testimony is a story of God changing someone's life. It doesn't have to be super dramatic, And so I was recalling how I shared this story, later during the summer, mission trip to make a point. I felt like I needed to have a more dramatic story. But the fact is that God grew me, became a Christian at a young age, and God grew me. And I'm thankful that God grew me.
Yeah.
And because if I hadn't got me at a young age, I don't know if I'd be a Christian today.
Yeah.
And there was, unbeknownst to me, in that crowd in this Japanese camp, there was a little girl who was visiting, and she wasn't old enough to be in the high school camp. She was, I think, 11, and her dad was visiting for some reason. She was sitting in the back of that room, and she heard that testimony, and she had grown up in a Christian home. For whatever reason, it touched her, and she gave her life to Christ that night.
That's awesome.
And I was like, that is so cool. And I never even got to talk to this little girl. Just someone told me about it later, and I thought, okay, that's cool. That is really just, a reminder of God working.
Cool. So since then, you've been making up
I've not made up any more fake testimonies.
Oh, okay.
Nope. Yeah.
That's a cool story, man.
Yeah.
Matt,
You
what
wanna
you
go?
got?
Yeah,
it's your
I
win.
mean, on these mission trips, I've gotten to share the gospel and see people respond. Whether it be going to someone's door, or whether getting to speak in front of a school of kids in Africa, and they respond. But probably the most significant win for me is when our students go from those mission trips, and then I've seen several students where that has kind of been the catalyst for their love for the world and going to the nations. Just last week, I had a former student that just came to me and told me that that trip had meant so much to them, to be able to, of course, see the world, but also just to be challenged in their call to take Christ to the nations, and how appreciative they were. And then it's like a couple of days later, I got another text from a former student just saying, when I think back on my youth, the times that were most significant to me were the camps, but also just the mission trips and getting to go into ministry. And so, that to me is the long lasting fruit, to see, the question of why do we do missions? Yes, there is need all over the world, but man, it's to help open people's eyes to the world around them, and to help them to realize their call to go into the world and to make disciples. And so, one of my former students, this is a different one. One of my former students just led a mission trip with his students, and to think I had the chance to take him on a mission trip and to invest in him, and now to see that he's getting to do that with students, and
that's cool.
It's incredible. And it's all God. God is faithful to do that, and kind to let me be a part of that. But that's probably the biggest win for me in all of these. So
I've seen that torch passed, and
Yep.
The byproduct of doing faithful missions with the sort of criteria you have is that it creates tremendous mobilization.
Yep.
And inspiration for more people to get involved with missions.
Yeah. No, man, I think there's so many wins that I've been blessed to get to see and be a part of from the Lord, from ways I can see how God opened my eyes and directed my life from a point that was just prior to me becoming a Christian throughout especially my teenage years, growing up with just a realization that this is a big world, and what God is up to in my life and is so much bigger than my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think sometimes we, small world, my life, God, what are you doing? It's like, man, God is up to so much more than me.
Yeah.
And you see it, you're a part of it, you get to experience the sweetness of the global local church, where you're singing praise songs in English, and someone next to you and German, and someone next to you and Romanian, and you're all singing the same song, praising the same Jesus, taking the same Lord's Supper, bound in, again, just small little glimpses of every tongue and tribe, opportunities you get to see for people to hear the gospel. it's just there's so many wins. A story that to me is probably one of the crazier stories that was to me personally, that felt at the time maybe like a failure, certainly felt out very uncomfortable. It was probably one of the more frightening experiences I had on a mission trip at the time. But in between my junior and senior year, on the last trip we took to Austria, now we've been taking trips to Steyr twice a year for, I was starting in 5th grade, so I was 10, 11. At that point I've been 17, so like 6 years, twice a year. I've been on half of those trips. So and that's to me, that's a win. When you get to go back to the same place and work with the same people and you develop relationships, not just with the believers, but with those who don't know Christ. And you get to share the gospel and you watch the fruit of, man, we've been sharing the gospel for the last 4 years with this guy, and man, he just responded. So I'll say we've been going there, and in Steyr there was a kebab stand. Have you ever had doner kebabs? Mm-hmm. Love kebabs. Like,
is it doner or donner?
Doner is, at least in German, doner, and then there'd be durum, which were the wraps, but the doner kebabs, they'd shave the meat off. It was fresh. Their bread was awesome. And so anytime we were there, it's like €3 to go get this full meal. That's where I was every time. Zeki's Kebab Shop. And anyways, on this trip, there was this day where it was kind of one of those weird things where that afternoon, none of the places that we were working at, were there any doors. So there was this chance to get to go out kind of outside of town to visit a church member who wanted their pottery business, but it was optional. And at first I was like, oh yeah, I'll go. And then when all of a sudden I realized, I was like, oh, I could just chill and rest for the afternoon. I'm going to take that option. Because at this point I had 2 years of German language. I could get around. I knew the city. I was very comfortable and home there. I wouldn't worry. It was good. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go get Zeki's for lunch. Well, there was another a girl who was in college that had decided to stay back, and she's like, I'm going to get Zeki's too. And there's a couple others that were walking by. So we go and grab, and we're sitting there eating our Zeki's, and he comes out and just starts talking to us.
The owner of the store?
The owner of the store, Zeki, but he's talking in German. I know a little bit of German, so I'm kind of picking up, and I can't totally understand everything. And basically then he says, hey, we'll just wait here for a minute. So he leaves, and we're like, okay. So we just keep eating. All of a sudden, we hear this. He comes roaring up this side alleyway in his BMW. Nice car. And out hops a friend of his who speaks English, and she goes, he wants to know what you're doing for the afternoon. We're like, well, we don't have any plans for the afternoon. And he's like, well, he'd like to take you and show you around the city. Of course, my mind's like, I don't know this guy. I mean, we know each other because I buy food from him, but we've never had a personal conversation. I've got this girl that all these, like, this is before Taken the movies come out, but those kind of stories are like running through your mind. Oh no, what do I do? And Lord, is this a moment? I've read all these missionary biographies. Are you doing something? What should I do? And so ultimately, the couple of things happen, and we both are kind of like, okay, we'll go with them. So we hop in his car, and it was just this time. We don't have enough time. It was this hilarious, like 2-hour journey to parts of the city we had never seen. It was just the funniest, like, take us here, but we can't do that because we're in flip flops and you got to have shoes for the go-kart. So take it, but it was fun. It was just us and him, and he was showing us around, and it was this great time. And so we get back, we walk up to the hostel. Soon the group gets back and like, all right, we're ready to. Hey guys, we're gonna go down and get Zeki's for dinner. And we're like, oh man. But here's what was cool about it. So there's this wild story, but it opened up the door when we told the missionary what had happened while it was gone. He was like, oh my goodness, this is huge. So when we went back, we were able to invite him to come to the Bible study we were doing.
Cool.
Which he now wanted to come to because of this connection. We were able to give him a Bible. He came from an Islamic background. Just all of a sudden doors started opening, and I wish I could say that ultimately he came to know Christ.
Maybe he did.
He might have, but it was after we lost contact. Yeah. But we got to really share the gospel with him and pour into his life and have some pretty long conversations that just came about from this really crazy, like, should I get in the car or not?
Sometimes God opens beamer doors for the gospel.
And truly, like that trip throughout the day, there were some wild things that happened on that little journey. But it was sweet. God was in control and opened up a really sweet door where we got to share the gospel and develop a relationship with Zeki.
That's
very
really
cool.
So,
wow, that's
good times.
It's pretty awesome.
I feel some kebabs right now.
I know. Now I'm like craving to go to the kebab shop up the
You just
street.
walk up, order fresh bread. They slice the meat, a little chili powder on there. Oh,
that sounds like a Mediterranean food, not a German food.
It is. It was Turkish.
Oh, well, there you go.
But this family, they ran this stand. It was so good. Like, listen, this is how much I ate there on those trips. there'd be 6 months in between trips, and when we get there, I would go there first thing. He'd see me and hand me a free piece of bread because I'd always buy an extra piece of bread to go with the meal. So it was my place, man. If I could eat anywhere in the world, I would go find that.
Now I know why you like the
stand to
kebab shop so much on the street. Very good. Well, we've wrapped up our stories. We've shared some good stuff.
Well, let me wrap this with this before
bonus
you go in
content.
Here. Yeah. Just to give you as a listener, because you go, okay, that's great, some cool stories. Let me encourage you with two things. One, prayerfully consider whether or not God would ever have you go on a short-term mission trip. Whether he go on a medium-term mission trip, maybe you're a student, maybe you get the opportunity to go somewhere for a summer, take a gap year. Maybe you're graduating college, a journeyman program through the IMB where you get to go overseas for 2 years and serve with missionaries. Or maybe whether you may be a teenager right now, you may be looking at entering your empty nest retiree stage. Maybe God's calling you to go full time. Yeah. So if one I can just challenge you as we have this whole conversation today that's kind of sparked out of the trip to Guatemala and future hopes we have as a church to be engaged with more mission partners around the country and around the globe. Be prayerful. How might God want to send you?
No doubt.
Because God's called you to go. None of us, it's not that some are called to go and some are called to stay. We're all called to go. Mm-hmm. It's just some of us need to go across the street to our neighbor, and some of us God is telling to go across the world. Two is this, that as we share all these stories, and I mentioned this briefly, I think it's great for all of us to remember it's easy to have this mission trip. Oh man, look at those cool stories, this or that. But whenever the disciples came back from really one of their first mission trips, and they were celebrating, here's all these cool things God did. And Jesus said, you're right, I saw it, it was awesome. Now let me encourage you. Be more amazed and joyful about the fact that your name's written in the Lamb's Book of Life. Mm-hmm. And so just as you hear all these stories, and I want to drive it back home to a point of what we rejoice that God moves, that God works, that God uses us and allows us to be a part. But may we never become so amazed by that we are more amazed by what God does on trips than the simple reality that it is a miracle any one of us are saved.
No doubt.
And it demonstrates the compassion and pursuit of a kind and personal, loving God. And so I think those are kind of two application points that just as we come to the end have been
the same things
on the heart.
that God has called us to do in a mission trip are the same things he wants us to do in our backyard.
Yeah.
To be a light to your neighbor, to be courageous to share the gospel with maybe even a family member. Yeah, it is.
It's our mission field.
It's our Jerusalem. Well, you guys ready to close things out? I want to share maybe a couple ways we can pray for our missionaries. So to close things out, I want to encourage you to pray for your missionaries in really two big ways. We've talked about funding, and that's sort of a given. I pray, one, that they would be encouraged. It is very hard to be a missionary, especially a career-time missionary in different mission fields. I know for my folks who are missionaries in Japan, toiling that soil is, if you get 1 or 2 baptisms a year, like that's a huge deal. Your average church size there is like 30 people on like the high side. It can be very discouraging to be a missionary. And so pray that God would lift their spirits up. Maybe he's calling you to write them a letter of encouragement, that you would actually personally be involved with, sort of lighting their fire and building them up, because it's a big deal. The second thing I encourage you to do to pray for missionaries is pray that they would see a harvest. So much work goes into being a missionary, and very little times they get to see the fruit of the missionaries, their work sometimes. So pray that God would move and that it would open their eyes to see the wins. You're talking about some of our failures, and it's easy to kind of get really inundated with those failures. You're on the mission field and whatnot, but and get discouraged. I pray that God would be able to see what they are accomplishing and what God is doing through them. So pray for encouragement, pray for a harvest, that their work and faithfulness will pay off. So
amen.
I'll leave you guys with that.
And as you pray, if you got any questions, comments, anything you want to read, feel free to reach out. Right, depending on where you're watching this, you can drop a comment on the comment box. You can email us, reach out. We'd love to hear from you.
No doubt.
All right.
And Matt would love you to flood his email box with lots of questions, and we won't make your email address phone in the public. But seriously, email us, message us on Facebook. We'd love to hear from you guys. And until next time, we will be doing this again probably a month from now.
Whenever the next time is.
Whenever we get the 3
on the backside of student camp.
Yeah, there you go. That's right. Maybe we have to have camp stories next.
Hey, yeah.
Oh, man.
We could
some
do
doozies there.
Good.
All right. We'll see y'all next time.
Bye.
Bye.